A man actually called the police, saying he had been raped by another man. The police rushed to the crime scene. Unexpectedly, they found as much as 3.29 terabytes of pornographic videos. At the scene, the male lead in them was thin and short, yet, by his own efforts alone, he forcibly violated the innocence of over 200 men in just 2 years, and they were all young male college students in their prime. He's the most prolific rapist in British judicial history, but how exactly did the man managed to rape hundreds of people, despite the huge disparity in size and strength? And how did he go undetected? During his 2 years of committing crimes, the story to be told now takes place in Manchester, UK, as the core of fintech in northern England. Manchester's fintech ecosystem is developing at a pace that is second to none in the entire UK. It also has very convenient transportation, and is one of the important transportation hubs in the UK. Moreover, Manchester is full of good universities. Most importantly, the nightlife here is very vibrant. As night falls, bars and nightclubs open their doors, and most of the people entering and exiting these places are male college students. 18-year-old Tom also likes to go to bars to party at night. This day was June 2nd, 2017. In his sleep, Tom felt pain in his lower body, so he tried his best to open his eyes, only to find himself lying on the bed in a strange posture. His pants had been pulled down, and there was a man right behind him, doing things that made him feel disgusted. Tom was so scared that he hurriedly fled from the bed. He looked around in confusion, not knowing where he was. He saw a naked man standing in front of him. Then, thinking back to what had just happened, Tom instantly flew into a rage and realized that he, a tall and burly tough guy, had actually been violated by another man, and the other person was a thin and weak man. Without hesitation, Tom angrily rushed at the man, pinned him to the ground and began beating him fiercely. Tom often played rugby at school, so he had great physical strength. He beat the other man up very badly. After beating him for a while, Tom noticed that the man who had violated him was covered in injuries all over his body. Only when the man's breathing became weak did Tom finally stop, call the police, and tell them that he had been violated by a stranger in an apartment near Princess Street in Manchester. Soon, the police received the call, rushed to the crime scene, and entered the apartment. They found the thin man on the ground, severely injured and naked. Then they looked at the muscular Tom, who had no external injuries. He was also staring at the man on the ground with hatred. It was very obvious. Tom was the pervert who had bullied the man, so the police quickly took out their handcuffs, ignored Tom's explanations, handcuffed him directly, and took him back to the police station for interrogation, and the person they considered the victim was carefully taken to the nearby Manchester Royal Hospital for emergency treatment. Not long after, Tom was taken into the interrogation room. The police wanted to know the details of how he had violated and beaten the man. Tom was already depressed enough about being violated, and now he was falsely accused. He desperately explained that he was the victim, but the police thought he was just making excuses. They said that the man sent to the hospital was so short and had been beaten black and blue. In their eyes, he looked more like the victim. Tom was left speechless after hearing this. On the other side, the beaten man had been out of danger. Policemen kept watch beside him. When they saw he woke up, they wanted to know what had happened the night before, but the other person didn't speak at all. The policeman had to take out his mobile phone, hoping the man would tell the password to cooperate with the police investigation. The other person swore not to speak at first, and couldn't explain why when asked. The policeman sensed something was wrong, and threatened him to unlock the phone. Just as they were about to check, unexpectedly, the man quickly snatched the phone away. This action made the policeman realize there was something shameful hidden in the phone, so they quickly grabbed the phone back. The moment they unlocked it, they were shocked. There were countless pornographic videos in the phone. All of them showed the man in front of them assaulting men in their sleep. This meant Tom wasn't lying. He was the real victim, and the thin man in the ward was the culprit. Then the police immediately launched an investigation into the man, and found his name was Reinhard Sinaga. He was born in 1983. He lived in Indonesia and his family was well off. His mother was a devout Christian and very friendly to everyone. His father ran a private bank, and also invested in the palm oil business. The family was never short of money. It can be said that Sinaga was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and never lacked love. Although his family was very wealthy, Sinaga didn't just slack off waiting to inherit the family property. He studied hard at school, and successfully got into the University of Indonesia. He graduated successfully in 2006, with a bachelor's degree in architecture, but he didn't want to stop there, so he chose to study abroad in the UK. With money and good grades, Sinaga easily got into the University of Manchester. A few years later, he successfully obtained a master's degree. Do you think it ended here? Sinaga felt he could go further, so in 2012, he went to the University of Leeds to pursue a PhD. After all, he didn't need to enter society quickly to work and earn money to support himself like others. His father strongly supported his studies, and his daily living expenses were very sufficient, and Sinaga didn't let his parents down. He was very successful in his academic pursuits. Every time, he got into prestigious schools and graduated successfully. Being good at studies was impressive enough, and his family background was enviably excellent. No matter how you look at it, Sinaga's future should have been smooth and wonderful, but he wanted to cause trouble himself. He was reported as a perverted rapist who specifically targeted men, before he even finished his PhD dissertation. When they heard about this, Sinaga's classmates and friends were all in disbelief. They said that in their impression, Sinaga was a very popular person. He was generous, funny, and loved to laugh. He was neither arrogant nor impetuous when facing difficulties. Everyone liked to work on projects with him. Moreover, Sinaga often recorded his life on social platforms. So in the eyes of outsiders, he was a completely sunny, cheerful boy who cherished a good life. Even Sinaga's parents initially kept saying their son was their pride. He was humble and kind. He often went to church to worship, so no one could imagine that Sinaga would do so many despicable things. But since Sinaga was so excellent in everyone's eyes, why did he turn to crime? Next, let's see what the police found. Several policemen entered Sinaga's expensive monthly rented apartment. This apartment was in a great location, in a bustling commercial area with convenient transportation. There were many nightclubs, bars, and clubs around. It was brightly lit and bustling with activity at night. Not only that, not far from this place, there's a special village that is one of Europe's oldest and most established gay communities. It's known as the gay capital of the north. After Sinaga was arrested, he admitted that he's also gay. Presumably, he chose an apartment here to be able to be himself freely. After all, this is something that couldn't be done in Indonesia, because if Sinaga had really admitted this in his hometown, it would probably have become a hot topic. Now, let's return to the police investigation of the apartment. The first thing the police officers saw when they entered was that Sinaga's home was filled with all kinds of alcohol, but alcohol alone couldn't make men unconscious, and at Sinaga's mercy, a thorough search indeed uncovered a lot of illegal drugs. The police also found cameras and a large number of memory cards. These contained as much as 3.29 terabytes of data. As mentioned earlier, after the police officers seized Sinaga's phone, they also found a large number of videos on it. What's more, all the victims were male. So how many victims were there exactly? The police, having to watch involuntarily and count carefully, found that a total of 206 men had been violated. The faces of 136 of them were captured clearly. The faces of the remaining 70 were too blurry to identify. But with so many victims, why did no one choose to call the police? After all, if it weren't for Tom bravely overpowering the culprit and calling the police in time this time, Sinaga's evil deeds would probably still not have been made public. With this question in mind, the police immediately set out to find the victims, based on physical evidence. But unexpectedly, Sinaga's recorded video showed that he had actually started committing crimes as early as 2015. Of course, it could have been even earlier, just not recorded by camera. This added quite a lot of difficulty to the police's search for victims, because most of the violated men looked very young. They were presumably college students studying in Manchester. Many left the area after graduation. The search scope expanded directly from one city to the whole UK. Even so, the police still made every effort to track down and verify. After finding several victims, they finally solved the problem that had puzzled them. It turned out that most victims didn't even know they had been violated. They only remembered drinking excessively outside the night before, meeting Sinaga after leaving the bar, and being invited to his home to continue drinking, then completely blacking out. Waking up the next day, they only felt unwell all over, thinking it was a side effect of drinking, and even thanked Sinaga for letting them stay overnight. Besides those who remembered nothing else, there were also a small number of people who actually suspected they had been violated, but they felt it was too shameful to talk about, fearing they would be looked at differently, and their lives would be affected from then on, so they chose not to speak out, kept it quiet, and didn't call the police. Now, the police have also contacted this small group of people. After careful consideration, they still didn't want to see Sinaga again, or get entangled with him. The police didn't press them too much. In the end, only 48 male victims were willing to appear in court. To ensure that the pervert Sinaga would be brought to justice, soon came the day of the trial. To protect the privacy of these victims, the British court held 4 separate trials, splitting information and scenarios to hide clues about the victims' identities. All victims mentioned afterward were referred to by pseudonyms. At the same time, the scope of dissemination was restricted, and no one was allowed to film for any reason, to prevent them from being retaliated against or suffering secondary harm due to identity exposure. Many thanked the court for this approach and chose to remain anonymous, but what was deeply shocking was that as the judge read out his crimes, Sinaga felt no remorse at all, and even showed a creepy smile when hearing the charges against him. Despite there being both witness and material evidence, Sinaga denied it and made up excuses, saying that the intimate interactions were consensual, those men had voluntarily slept with him, otherwise, they wouldn't have drunk the alcohol that enhanced the mood. As for why those men in the videos had their eyes closed, it was all pretense to add to the mood. Sinaga spoke while laughing. What he said became more and more absurd. He even shouted at the victims who testified against him, telling them to stop pretending. Hadn't they all proposed to him? After following him home, only Sinaga himself would believe such a lie. The judge certainly didn't believe it. The victims became even more angry upon hearing this. They wished they could rush over and tear Sinaga to pieces on the spot, and the first thing to be torn apart would definitely be his lying mouth. The police were left speechless by his confusing remarks and had to present evidence. They played clips in court. This was torturous for the jury, judge, and victims to watch. It can be said that apart from the pervert Sinaga, who looked enjoying and admiring his own masterpieces, everyone else wished they could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. After being forced to watch several videos, the police said that it could be clearly seen from them that the victims slept soundly throughout the violation, and many even snored. It was obvious that they weren't pretending to be asleep. Moreover, if one or two were pretending to sleep, could so many people all be pretending? And among the 48 who testified in court, the first victim was Anto. It was one night in 2015. He wanted to go to a club to drink to his heart's content. As a grown man, he never thought there would be danger. He only vaguely remembered leaving the club after drinking. When he woke up again, he found himself lying in his strange room, dizzy and groggy, with a strong feeling of discomfort in his lower body. When Sinaga saw he was awake, he said he had seen Anto dead drunk the night before, and, not bearing to see someone sleep on the street, had kindly taken him home. This reason was actually hard to fault. Anto sincerely thanked him, not realizing he had been violated at all. Later, Sinaga continued to commit crimes. One day, he even showed off online. He posted such a message: "Manchester is a magical place, it's a city of same-sex romance. Take a sip of my secret poison, and I will make you fall in love." Netizens who didn't understand the context would only think Sinaga must be gay. How could they have imagined he had done so many inhuman things? In January of the same year, Sinaga continued to look for targets near bars. After seeing the appearance of a 19-year-old man, his eyes never left him. The man was having a conflict with his girlfriend at that time. His girlfriend left in a huff. Sinaga saw the opportunity and immediately went up to strike up a conversation. Then, under the pretense of comforting him, he made the man drink alcohol laced with drugs. After violating another man, Sinaga felt a great sense of satisfaction. He was very proud and showed off that he was a savior, having saved a wronged man from a bad woman. But no one knew that the salvation he spoke of was actually committing such a heinous act. Since he had never been reported, Sinaga became even more brazen. In September 2016, Sinaga found that many people went out drinking on weekends, so he planned his time and violated two 19-year-old boys in one day. One of the victims was Jack, a college student. He remembered getting into a taxi with a man. After drinking until he was dazed, he had thought he would be taken back to his dormitory, but unexpectedly, when he opened his eyes the next day, he found himself in Sinaga's home with no clothes on. He questioned Sinaga about what was going on. The other person said he had seen Jack vomiting badly, and had kindly helped take off his vomit-stained clothes. After saying that, he asked Jack if he was touched, and if he wanted to do something different. Jack, who was heterosexual, was scared and quickly said no, then hurriedly left the apartment. But a victim named Daniel exposed Sinaga's evil deeds. In front of the media, he said that if the police hadn't contacted him, he wouldn't even have known what he had gone through. Now being told he had been violated by a man, it took him a long time to accept the reality. Recalling the scene at that time, Daniel remembered that he was celebrating his 2015 birthday with friends that day. They specifically chose to celebrate outside. Everyone drank to their heart's content and then all went home. Daniel, the only one left, also planned to call a taxi to go home, after saying goodbye to his friends. But he hadn't hailed a taxi yet. Suddenly, he wanted to find a place to relieve himself, so he hurried to a small alley to find a toilet. After that, he couldn't remember what happened. He only knew that when he woke up, he was in Sinaga's home. The first feeling was a headache that felt like it was about to explode, and his lower body was also uncomfortable. Daniel wanted to know what was going on. Sinaga just said the same things as before. Daniel didn't expect to be violated until 2 years later, when the police found him and showed him the 2.5-minute clip recorded by Sinaga. He suddenly realized, aside from shock, it was all regretting that he hadn't protected himself when he was out. I believe everyone here understands by now, Sinaga's modus operandi for committing crimes was only one kind in itself. The apartment he lived in was close to bars and clubs. Around dawn, many people were already drunk and very likely to be alone. At this time, Sinaga would go out to commit crimes. Judging from the surveillance cameras outside the apartment building, once, Sinaga actually took less than a minute to help a man upstairs. In addition to this kind of person who came to him, there were many others who left the bar after drinking, and intended to take a taxi home, but dazedly collapsed on the roadside or in an alley. For this kind, Sinaga even saved the trouble of continuing to get them drunk, directly taking them from outside, and putting them on the bed in one go. As for those who weren't completely drunk, Sinaga would go up to talk to them, help them, and say to find a place to have a few more drinks. When meeting with those who said they couldn't drink anymore, he would lie that he would take them to a cool place to sober up. Usually, no one would refuse. After all, it's a society ruled by law. What danger could there be for a grown man? Little did they know that it was precisely because of their weak safety awareness that gave the pervert Sinaga an opportunity. After the victims followed him into the apartment, Sinaga would add something to the alcohol or sobering drinks. Whoever drank it would black out. At this time, Sinaga would carefully shake and call them to confirm that the victims were really sound asleep. Before he would act, when the victims opened their eyes, their innocence had already been violated. They would ask what had happened. Sinaga would portray himself as a good Samaritan, because he couldn't bear to see someone unconscious, sleeping on the roadside, so he took them back to his home. Although the victims' lower bodies felt somewhat uncomfortable, their headaches were more severe, so their attention was more focused on the splitting headache. Upon learning that they had been picked up and taken home by a good Samaritan, they would also thank Sinaga. Using this one trick, Sinaga committed crimes for 2 years without being discovered. He thought he would never be exposed in his lifetime, but in fact, before Tom called the police, another victim had called the police. It was April 2017. A victim, after going back home in a daze, always felt unwell all over, especially his anus felt particularly strange. This state lasted for 2 days. He realized he seemed to have been violated, so he quickly called the police, but the police asked many questions. He couldn't remember clearly, only remembered that when he woke up again after drinking, there was an Asian man standing in front of him. He was naked and his head was still groggy. He dragged his uncomfortable body back home, finally, because the victim couldn't remember the apartment address, nor the appearance of the Asian man. The police had no way to investigate, so they put the case aside for the time being, until 2 months later. Tom beat Sinaga severely and called the police. Sinaga was finally arrested. As for why others couldn't wake up, but Tom did, it might be that his own physique was special, so he sobered up faster. Or it might be that he drank very little of the laced alcohol, so he was able to wake up when Sinaga was committing the crime, and beat the other person until he was covered in cuts and bruises, with an absolute overwhelming advantage. Now the truth has come to light. The trial of Sinaga took 2 years. Upon hearing the judge read out the charges against him, Sinaga firmly denied them. But with both witness and material evidence, denial was useless. Finally, Sinaga was convicted of 159 sexual offenses, including 136 counts of rape, 13 counts of sexual assault, 8 counts of attempted rape, and others. In January 2020, Manchester Crown Court sentenced Sinaga to 88 life sentences, with a minimum term of 30 years before he can apply for parole. Afterwards, Sinaga was dissatisfied and hired a lawyer to appeal, claiming he was innocent, saying those men had voluntarily had relations with him. The court directly rejected the appeal and increased his minimum term to 40 years. After delivering the verdict, the judge, moved, said to the heinous Sinaga, "In my view, you are a very dangerous, cunning, and deceitful person. I hope you will never be released." The victims felt a sense of relief upon learning this outcome. Many shared their thoughts. Victim 1 said, "I hope Sinaga spends the rest of his life in prison, not only for what he did to me, but also because he harmed many other young men, bringing them immense pain and stress." Victim 2 said, "The day the police contacted me, I will never forget, because it completely changed my life." Victim 3 said, "I hope he rots in prison, and can feel the pain and suffering I endured. He destroyed my life." The UK Crown Prosecution Service determined that Sinaga is the most prolific sex offender in British legal history. He is truly frenzied and inhuman. After the trial concluded completely, the media exposed the case, causing a huge uproar. Britain's poured abuse on Indonesians, which was a complete overgeneralization. Indonesians felt wronged and scolded Sinaga, wishing to strip him of his Indonesian citizenship, constantly posting on social media, saying Sinaga is a disgrace to Indonesia, that just sentencing him to prison is too lenient, and he deserves the death penalty. But even though they said that, the UK abolished the death penalty long ago, so it was definitely impossible. I believe many people watching this are wondering what Sinaga's parents think of their son's heinous crimes. In fact, during the trial, Sinaga's father never appeared at all. Only his mother attended one hearing, but she appeared very distraught, saying she didn't know her son was gay. She and her husband are both Christians, and took Sinaga to church when he was little, never imagining Sinaga would do such things. Not long after, whether influenced by Sinaga or Not, his father approached the media, saying he accepted the trial result for Sinaga. He deserves it. I don't want to talk about it more or see him again. Regarding Sinaga's mother saying, she didn't know her son was gay. Many think Sinaga changed after going to the UK. After all, when he first went to study in the UK, he didn't live in his current apartment. It was after some time that he moved near the gay village, but others think Sinaga realized his different sexual orientation while in Indonesia, but dared not speak of it until he went to the UK, discovered a new world and completely let himself go. Analyzing Sinaga's criminal psychology, first, he has an extreme desire for control, leaving victims unable to resist, to satisfy his distorted psychological and physical needs, proving he has absolute dominance and control. Second, he has an obvious antisocial personality, unable to understand others' pain and lacking empathy, with no sense of guilt or remorse. Committing crimes for 2 years, with no repentance in between, even in court, he refused to admit his mistakes from start to finish, insisting the victims he harmed were voluntary, even with evidence right in front of him, completely violating the bottom line of morality and law. His fate is well deserved. Finally, a reminder to all men, boys, remember to protect yourselves when you're out. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.